Welcome, friends, to another episode of LSR Live. I'm your host, Scott Ritzema with Living Springs Retreat. I love our live experiences together, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, although we have one coming up that is not at that time. It is a special edition, and right out of the gates, this is the most important thing I'm going to say all evening. Mark your calendar, write it down, put an alert on your phone, set your alarm, click notify me, do whatever you need to do to remember to be here Monday, 12:30 Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Central Time for our delightful, wonderful, everybody's favorite teacher on health, Barbara O'Neill. And we're going to be live with Barbara O'Neill for a Q&A, an extended Q&A experience. I believe this is going to be one of the biggest online events of the year. So I know you're all going to be there, but please spread the word. This is going to be just awesome. We're going to be able to ask her our questions, and I'll be hosting, and we're going to have a great time together Monday. So don't miss that one. So LSR Live next week is not Wednesday, but Monday. And that's Monday, November 11, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Central. And I'll probably need to say that a few more times because that's important. I know we've got a lot of big Barbara fans, and we are big fans ourselves of our colleague and friend, Barbara O'Neill. So the topic today I'm going to tell you about shortly. It's a topic that's really, really plaguing our society, maybe one of the most important topics we can talk about on the health front. It's going to be just me. So I'm kind of relaxed today. Normally, I'm kind of like getting really quick done with the opening, factoids because our guest is waiting there. And there's no guest. It's just you guys and me today. So feel free to load your questions up in the chat. If you've been listening to these programs, you're like, I've had a question for Scott all along. This is a time to ask me any questions you want. But my specialty is on the topic of media, the effects of entertainment media, social media, video game addiction, child development, basically anything involving media and the brain and our spiritual lives. I've been doing a seminar for many years called Media on the Brain, and you'll get a little bit of a glimpse into that today. But first, I got a story for you guys. I'm always showing you these products, right? This is my favorite sponsor of the LSR Live program. That's the one you happen to see pictured on the screen there, the RevitaGuard throat spray. Well, the story is I picked something up this past weekend, and it came on fast and it came on hard, and I felt like immediately like garbage really quickly. And normally it's like maybe there's something coming on, and I can target it, and I got no sweat to knock things out. And this one, I'm like, okay, prayer, all the remedies I know, and I went hardcore on the fighting off and boosting the immune system. And this was 4 days ago. And literally when doing all the things, including I felt it a little bit in the throat. I was feverish. I just took a nap. I'll tell you all the remedies too. I mean, you need a whole list ready to go. And this should be in your arsenal. The RevitaGuard throat spray is powerful at coating the throat, and just leave it there. Don't swallow it right away. And then spray again a little later, and then spray again a little later, as much as you want. Use as directed. Consult your physician. I'm not diagnosing, treating, or curing anything, but this stuff is powerful. And so that's why it's one of the favorites of the LSR store. Use that QR code to get your RevitaGuard. Now that one's tasty because it's got a little peppermint. It's sweet and stuff. This one, it's nothing to write home about in terms of the experience because, spraying anything up your nose isn't going to be, that wonderful, but it's worth it. The Revita Sinus, powerful also. These have iodine. These have essential oils, particularly the essential oils that have the pinene in it. Are you aware that if you walk through a pine forest and you breathe the air, it actually boosts your immune system? And so same thing, because that rosemary essential oil is in there, and rosemary has loads of that pinene, and you don't take pine essential oil internally. It's too harsh. But the rosemary in there, the peppermint, the iodine, and the something that we don't say on these platforms, click over there. You'll find out what the main ingredient is in there that is really, really, really good for boosting the immune system. And during this time of year, man, there's so much going around. And my precious family, I love my family. They're not quite as aggressive with spraying this stuff as I am. I mean, I've got it in my pocket. I've got it next to me on the table if I'm reading. It's in the cup holder in the car if I'm driving. I'm just over and over and over again if I'm in that moment of fighting something off. And I just, praise God, I haven't. Once you say it now, I'm bound to, but I have not gotten sick like at all for years. It just, a day or not even of fighting things off. Now, beyond the sprays, that's the QR code. Follow that. Get that. It's highly recommended. Revita Living products. But for those who can't afford that, you can do things for free and cheap at home. And remember, I'm talking about immunity right now because I'm just telling you the story of my week and why I get to be with you. And I'm not coughing and sniffling and laying around. I am feeling amazing. And part of it is rest. That's a big one. I told you I took that nap when I started to feel just, sluggish, feverish. Get that nap in and good night's sleep. And if you need to, if you're having a hard time getting to sleep, taking some sort of, herbal sleep aid supplements like the ones in the LSR store. Jeremy, you could bring up a QR code for those as well. I didn't even think to mention that, but I was mentioning the free things. Water, lots of water internally and then externally. And I'm talking about the hot, cold showers. Do the contrast showers, boost your immune system, do it multiple times a day, 2 or 3 minutes as hot as you can, and then 30 seconds, 100% cold water. Douse yourself with that, rest afterward. There are many herbal supplements that you can do, but I like recommending also the free options like sleep, water, rest. Hydrotherapy is what that's called with the contrast showers. Also just rest mentally. You don't want high stress. You don't want, a lot happening. You need to calm, nature, fresh air, sunshine, vitamin D, of course, your vitamin C, zinc, and many, many things like that. We've covered this before. Go back and watch the old episode with Walt Cross. That was a favorite LSR Live episode. But next week, Monday, we're talking Monday, November 11th, Barbara O'Neill, live at 12:30 Eastern Time. That will be the one for the ages this year so far in our series. I think we're ready to roll into the media seminar. This is a topic that I've had the privilege to present at like almost 500 churches over the last 12 years. And so, being a part of LSR, hosting these programs is a great privilege. I love the health message. I love dealing with health topics and talking to interesting people and engaging with you guys. And I've kind of moved into this digital realm more so than traveling and speaking and being on the road all the time. But that history of the last 12 years has taught me a lot about the state of mental health in our society, doing a lot of research on the effects of media. So I've got actually a PowerPoint. Jeremy, if you want to bring that PowerPoint up, that would be wonderful. And I'll just walk you guys through some information on this evening rather, and ask questions about this media topic. I'm pulling this information from the seminar called The Media Mind, Reclaiming the Human Soul in the Digital Dark Age. And I want to begin with the factoid. When was the first electronic media device ever invented? Think about it. You put it in the chat. I'm not observing the chat, but you chat about that in there. What was the first one? Was it television? There must have been electronic media before the television. The radio? Before that. The silver screen was before the radio. Even earlier, go back to the mid-19th century, talking mid-1800s. The first electronic media device ever invented was the telegraph. And that was invented in the year 1844. We've got a picture of the telegraph, I believe, Samuel Morse tapping away on the telegraph. And the interesting thing about the first text message ever sent was that the words were actually a scripture. I know our listeners, our viewers are from all over the world, many cultures, many religious backgrounds. We're a Christian health ministry at Living Springs. We welcome and love everybody of all faiths and perspectives, and we cherish that perspective as being from the Bible. That love and that openness to every human soul as an image bearer of God is the essential component of our Christian worldview. And so when I say that, it's to set up this. Samuel Morse, the first message across the wire using Morse code was, "What hath God wrought?" So as I think about how these media, we're able to do these programs to share an experience together, to present information, to change lives through the health ministry that Living Springs is all about. I stand in awe of almost 200 years of the growth of media, the origins of which said, "What hath God wrought?" This is his invention. I mean, we're created beings, right? Let's be honest. And we have ingenuity, ability, skill to invent because God gave that to us. So Samuel Morse gave glory to God. Now, I want to go to some physiological effects, and we can go through the slideshow, Jeremy, as I'm going through the slides here. Physiological effects of media. The first one is, many times when we are in the position of on our device, we tend to hunch. You know, you got the forward head posture. And that actually puts, at a 45-degree angle, when the head is at that angle, it puts 49 pounds of pressure on the upper spine. That's not good. And the muscles start to reshape the spine when we're in that position for so long, so that we have a more forward head than human posture has had for generations. In fact, that somebody put a joke image out, and it's, the evolutionary theory has us slowly rising, eventually being Homo erectus. And I subscribe to the biblical creation account, so not the Darwinistic approach. But the people made the joke about the Darwin image there with the man coming back down. This is Phono sapien. I found that to be quite sad or humorous. We got to laugh at ourselves a little bit, don't we? A study reveals that a large part of the population is not able to breathe properly. So much hunching of the posture, doing, whether it's video games or watching TV or on our devices or on our computers or whatever. I mean, most of the media I consume is when I'm actually walking outside. I'm consuming it audio, and I try to walk after a meal. We've talked about a digestion walk in previous programs, very good for blood sugar control and digestion. When you're in a hunched position, it hampers digestion. It does not allow the digestive organs to do their work properly, and the respiratory organs. When you're in this position, you don't get the full respiration, which oxygenates the blood and goes to the brain. And so all these things filter back to affecting our brains. But there's actually interesting research on posture and mindset. When people are in a slouched position, that slouched position tends to produce in their psychology more negative words, pessimistic outlook, and depressed feelings. Whereas if you stand straight, it actually produces a more positive outlook, more confidence, and a better mood. Is that not interesting? I find that to be beautiful. And, from a biblical perspective, I like, it is no longer I who live, but Christ who liveth in me. It's not I'm projecting confidence and it's all about me attitude. That's actually harmful to psychology. But it's in academic settings also. If we go forward a couple of slides to the kids in school slouching, you're going to produce lower quality academic performance in that position and higher quality academic performance in the sitting upright position. Now, this headline got my attention. We're talking about health. We're talking about mental health. But how about not dying? Huge rise in pedestrian deaths, a big cause for concern. Car and Driver magazine found people on their devices so much walking on the sidewalks on the streets, they're walking right off of the curb into the traffic, unaware that there are cars coming at 45 miles an hour. There was a huge rise in pedestrian deaths because we're so glued to these devices. And then in many municipalities, they actually changed where the traffic signals are for pedestrians. Literally, this is like out of a dystopian fiction novel or movie, isn't it? In the near future, human beings live in this position and they don't look at the stop and go walking man up at eye level, which signal the traffic to walk across the crosswalk. They have to put the red light at our feet so we don't walk into the curb. I mean, I remember I was 5. I think all of you were probably in kindergarten when you learned stop, look, and listen. And here we are struggling with this and struggling to not walk into a lamppost in the sidewalk. In Austria, they put pads on the lampposts there. I know these are just silly anecdotes, but this guy, Jeremy, can you roll this one as a video? The guy walking down the alley, there's a manhole there, and he walks right into the manhole through the barriers. It's the next slide after that, but it may not work on the one I sent you. But yeah, I'll spare you guys. You don't want to see the pain and suffering of this poor fellow on his phone. Doesn't even notice. We can sum that all up with the media mind is checked out. We too many times are checked out. But if we replace the media mind with, from our Christian perspective, the mind of Christ, then we can be engaged. Engaged not just with the hole in the ground, the objects around us, but more importantly with the people around us, the needs around us, the beauty around us, the voice of God, being truly engaged. It's time to learn to be human again. In family life, in social life, in time spent in nature and in books and with people and serving others and family and occupational and artistic and musical and hobbies and cooking and gardening and just every aspect of what it means to be fully human can be recaptured if we put media in its proper place. And of course, we're using media right now. So this is not a seminar that is given to declare all media use to be verboten. That would be silly and contradictory and imbalanced and actually not based on the science. But if we can get more nature exposure, less entertainment and overstimulating media, I'll come back to that in just a minute. But we're several slides past this one right now, Jeremy. We're at the most socially connected generation in history. Now, that's one of the things that the social media giants have said. We are the most socially connected generation in history. But if that's the case, do you guys remember hearing about, and put in the chat if you have heard of this, okay? I'm not making this up. The cuddling with strangers craze. I'm seriously, where people will go and find strangers to snuggle with and cuddle with. We feel so alone, so isolated, so unfulfilled socially that we feel the need to hire professional cuddlers who hire out their services to snuggle and cuddle with people. Anybody who's feeling that need, by the way, you are loved. You are loved by Jesus. You are loved by your Creator God. And you might be like, Scott, when you say you care about the listener and the audience, how can that be? You know, we're at such great distances. It is a mandate from heaven for me to care about every soul. And I can't see you and I can't be with you right now. But if you're struggling, if you're part of the mental health crisis of a generation that we're going to be looking at, we're here to help. And so stick with us. But those who were weirded out by the cuddling with strangers craze, they made this chair that will hug you back. And the guy that invented it is like, it'll make you feel loved and hugged. And I'm like, oh, we do have a loneliness epidemic. This is a Surgeon General of the United States of America. He said we have a loneliness epidemic. So the most socially connected generation in history has become the most lonely generation in history. That's why I put the quotes around as saying, are we really socially connected? I love these forms of media to disseminate information, to get our questions answered, to learn. But social fulfillment will not happen here. Finding a good church, serving in your community, making sure we're connecting with our friends, our closest loved ones, not just over a text thread. The media mind is lonely, but the mind of Christ is fulfilled. Now, the University of Pennsylvania and Denmark both did a study where they gave people a media fast for 7 days. And let's watch how it affects their loneliness scores. And loneliness dropped 36% when young adults got off of social media for 7 days. Teens now consume... just to repeat that, in case you missed that, when we get off social media for 7 days, our loneliness scores drop 36%, young adults. So, you know what? If you fast for a little while, catch up on the videos after a week, it may give you a boost and a benefit. I'm glad you're all here. But finding our proper balance, each one of us. Teens, however, today are consuming 9 hours of entertainment and social media per day. 9 hours per day. And this CNN article actually came out and said, by the numbers, kids are not spending more time with screens than they were in the 80s. So wait a minute. I grew up in the 80s. I remember the 80s. We were not doing 9 hours of entertainment and social media per day. There was no social media yet, but I actually wanted the data on that. So I looked at San Diego State University researcher Jean Twenge. She's tracked generational habits going back many generations. And it was 3.5 hours per day on average in the 1980s. And then today it's 9 hours. So it's nearly tripled. So one thing I want to throw in here is the media mind is more deceivable meaning we take in what the mainstream media puts in our minds, and we take it at face value. We need to question everything. Question myself, the guests on this program. Think for ourselves. This is essential that we not become lazy in our thinking and develop a habit of taking in passively what we are told. We want to be engaged thinkers, not mere reflectors of other men's thoughts. Now, I had the teens at 9 hours a day. Do you know parents are actually consuming nearly 8 hours a day of entertainment and social media? So sometimes we're like, oh, kids these days, and then the rest of us. Here's what I recommend before we get into the rest of the information. You ever go to an optometrist, right? He brings the instruments down in front of your eyes, and you're supposed to read the top line, and you can read the top line just fine. And then you get down to the second line. Okay, I can read that. By the time you get down to the third line, he's like, no, please go ahead and read that one. And you're going, is that a C or a G or an O or a Q? I don't know what that is right there, doc. And he's like, which one is clearer, 1 or 2? And you say 2 is clear. And he goes 2 or 3. And 2 is clearer. And he does that routine, number 4. What are you trying to say, doc? 2 is clearer, but what does that mean? Well, 2 is your new prescription. You can see clearer now that you've tried something different. You came into the optometrist's office thinking, well, I can see fine. My dad was an optometrist, actually. I asked him, Dad, did people come into your office thinking they could see fine? And then after they do the test, then they go, oh, yeah, I guess I was seeing a little blurry. And now that I have something to compare it to, so this is why you do trials in your life. One of the first ever randomized controlled trial was in the book of Daniel, chapter 1. And for 10 days, Daniel and his friends were permitted by the king, who they were in the king's court as servants of the king, captives from their land in Judah. And they said, for 10 days, we want to not eat the king's food or drink the king's alcohol. And we want to eat only whole plant foods and drink only water. And let's see how things go after 10 days. And then after 10 days, their brains were working better. They were wiser. They were stronger physically. And they were they were wiser, stronger, healthier. And it shows that when you try something, you have a before and after, then you can know. So same thing here with media use. When I try something different out, have limits here, make sure to get that good kind of quality input there, and test it for 7 days or 10 days, you'll see the difference. So we're up to Jeremy, the blue light at night image and the orange light in the evening. We're way past that part. Yeah, there you go. Awesome. One of the things about sleep disturbances is hyper-stimulating blue bright light media in the evenings. Now, if it's calming media and we've got our filters and we're toning down the blue light frequencies, that there's not going to be a problem with screens in the evening. But if it's a high stress experience, then sleep disturbances occur. And again, we may not even notice they're happening until we try something different. They're like, wow, I feel I have more energy than I did. I must be sleeping better. But as you think about the light of the setting sun and the kind of lights that we traditionally placed in our homes, the fireside, the wood stove, the candles, the lanterns, it's a different tone of light that you'll see appear on the screen shortly. But I mentioned the stimulant effect is actually even more important than the blue light emitting devices. When children play video games before bed, the effect on their sleep, how harmful it affects their sleep, only takes 30 minutes to achieve of video games, where it takes 2 hours of television. So in other words, video games are 4 times more hyperstimulating to children than the television that they are watching in the evening. So that's something to consider as well. But the media mind is just more tired. The mind of Christ is more energized. Now, I want to give you some stats about children. Today, 96.6% of toddlers and preschoolers are using mobile devices, American Academy of Pediatrics. 2 to 5-year-olds average 4 hours of screen time per day. And by the age of 7, they've spent an entire year of their lives in front of the TV screen. So there are literally hundreds of studies showing developmental delays, psychological disruptions for even just 2 hours of television per day in these early childhood years. And so the amount of research we have on it is very clear, but the conduct of the culture is not keeping pace with the science and the reality of what we really do unto others, what we would want to have done to us to optimize our children's development. Jeremy, I want you to put the image on the screen of the baby in the bouncy seat. this is a real thing. This is a baby looking at the iPad from babyhood, and they market this as you'll see here, Fisher Price iPad activity seat, newborn to toddler. Newborn to toddler. And then they put the iPotty out there. And this one I got a good laugh out of that. We have to induct our children into the virtual environment from babyhood and learning to use the potty to gamify the process. This shows a little bit of a cultural dysfunction, I think. But there was a guy who wrote a book 40 years ago called The Disappearance of Childhood, Neil Postman. And it sounds a little bit hyperbolic, like really the disappearance of childhood. But now we have to the point where the majority of childhood, almost all of childhood, is comprised of school, sleep, and media, and very little marginal time for the things that used to just so much monopolize their day. And now 3/4 of UK children spend less time outdoors than prison inmates. 3/4 of UK children spend less time outdoors than prison inmates. This book, The Last Child in the Woods, this author wrote about a study that was done of 11-year-olds. And they asked these 11-year-olds, how many of you have climbed a tree before? And of course, every 11-year-old is it's one of those primer questions to get everybody saying, yeah, of course, right? Everybody's going to say, no, the majority of 11-year-olds have never climbed a tree before. That's a sad fact right there. 6 to 16-year-old kids are spending twice as much time just playing video games compared with all outdoor activity combined. The anecdote of Steve Jobs' kids, I think, bears repeating, because it's interesting that the Silicon Valley elite, they don't do things this way with their kids. Remember when the iPad came out and Steve Jobs was asked by the journalist, hey, what do your kids think of this iPad that's about to hit the store shelves? And he's like, well, actually, they've never used one. And the journalist couldn't believe his ears, but that's the reality. He said, no, we have mealtime together in the home. Bill Gates said the same thing, high-tech guy, but his kids had only 45 minutes of screen time per day when they were in the home. And mealtime together was very important. Current CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, says, I don't want my nephew on a social network. So it's just like the young people, it'd be better for the teens to not be on there at all. There's this wonderful quote: the more quiet and simple the life of the child, the more free from artificial excitement, and the more in harmony with nature, the more favorable it is to physical and mental vigor and to spiritual strength. Just rediscovering natural childhood, not some novel program here, just kind of normal, natural childhood. I show these 4 entertainers on the screen because they all opened up in interviews admitting that their children are not exposed to the Hollywood or music industry content that they themselves are producing. Adam Alter wrote the book Irresistible, and he said he interviewed video game designers as a part of the writing and research for this book. And he said these video game designers, and it's not only that their children are protected from it, but they themselves will not play the video games that their industry is churning out. This is Alex Constantinople. She's the CEO of the Outcast Agency, another Silicon Valley firm. And in this one, it came out, they asked her, how do you do tech with your kids at home? She's like, well, no screen time at all for my young children till age 5. And then after that, 30 minutes max per day. And we try to do things together. That's pretty interesting because when they did a focus group study in homes and they looked at toddler and preschool age kids on the devices, the majority of parents had zero interaction with their children at all during those times of childhood media use. That is tremendously harmful to child development. We know that from the research. And the people are crying off from the rooftops from all sectors of child development community and mental health and physical health. But when you start to probe and ask, all the tech firms in Silicon Valley, you name them, we're going to ask them, the engineers, the mid-level people, how do you guys do things differently? How do you guys do things with media and your children in your homes? And it's the same story. And the most sought after private school in Silicon Valley is the Waldorf School of the Peninsula, where it's back to basics. It's pen and pencil, chalk and chalkboards, gardening, no media. So it's the Silicon Valley disconnected childhood. What do they know that we don't know? Well, we know enough. We know an awful lot. There's hours and hours and hours of this content. You can find us at the website there, beltoftruthministries.com, or if you want to watch it, the streaming versions of these seminars that are in their totality. We got like 12 hours of content on the media topic at beltoftruth.tv. That's the one that I should mention to learn more. We know an awful lot. Here's some more. Dark consensus about screens and kids begins to emerge in Silicon Valley. And this was a New York Times expose where they looked at across the board that they're the most strict people you will find on media and childhood development would be these big tech people. Let's talk about what we can do better. I've mentioned nature, but also family time together, person to person, in face to face. Oh yeah, there's the QR code. Thank you for that, Jeremy. The complete library of the Belt of Truth content there is at beltoftruth.tv. So this seminar in its completeness, you're getting a small segment of it, as well as other seminars on media and other topics there as well. Parenting, child development, education. I used to be a teacher, so I do a seminar called Schooled, the Deliberate Agenda to Destroy Individuality, Reduce Intelligence, and Re-Engineer Society. That's a fun one. We talk about current events. We do Bible prophecy over there, lots of things. But Penn State, you did a study where they asked people about their dates. Did they go on a date with their significant other? And they say, how often is the device disrupting the date? The majority of people say that it happens most of the time. And then they asked about relationship satisfaction. And the people who had more interference, they called it technoference in the relationship satisfaction drops. You didn't need me to tell you that. You didn't need Penn State University to tell you that, did you? And University of Michigan has looked at the same in the homes of people. Now, I always ask, does God have the answer to this? He put Adam and Eve in a garden. So being in nature, he gave us the family. So restoring the family and spending time with our children. In fact, it says in Deuteronomy chapter 6, it says parents can talk about the things of God and truth and love with your children as you rise up and as you lie down and as you walk by the way and as you sit in your house, just all these times of the day, just kind of doing life together, trying to restore that. There's a prophecy actually in Malachi that says in the last days, the hearts of the children and the hearts of the fathers will turn toward each other again. I love that. And here's another practical idea. Psalm 128 verse 3 says that the children will be like olive plants round about thy tables, round about your table. So it's what happens at the table is mealtime. And Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, they were both always like, oh yeah, mealtime together as a family is important. And I don't mention them because I look to them as my model, by the way. It's just like, if they get it, how much more the rest of us should we be getting this? But can we talk about attention span for just a little bit as I quickly change the subject on you and reduce everybody's attention span by changing the slide every 5 seconds? But you now have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. Time magazine, the goldfish's attention span is 9 seconds in the average human attention span in the industrialized world. They say, I don't know exactly how they measure that. Makes for an interesting headline, but 8 seconds. Now, I know that nature improves attention span. So the more nature exposure you have, the less overstimulating media you have, the more longer attention spans we all get. And this is not just for kids. And even just watching fish in a fish tank it lengthens our attention span. The media mind is becoming more distractible, but the mind of Christ more attentive. And I want to talk about executive function because this executive attention in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, this is where our brain pays attention. And so we might think, well, attention span isn't all that important to me because I'm not in school anymore. So, but watch out because the executive attention, the executive function of the brain where we pay attention is the same area for emotional self-regulation, regulating our impulses, exercising wise judgment and planning. Basically, what Christians call the fruit of the spirit of self-control. So if I'm reducing my attention span by overstimulating media, bam, bam, here, there, new image on the screen, flashing at me all the time, then I actually can be harming my success in other areas of life, self-regulation, controlling my emotions, and so on. And also, you remember the 8 seconds factoid a minute ago? You got the thinking man here. And I remember hearing that there was research done on people's aha moment where they go, bingo, I've got it. You've solved a problem. You came up with a creative idea. Usually that comes after 15 to 20 minutes on average of focused attention, rolling it over in your mind, weighing options. 15 to 20 minutes is like 1,000 seconds. And if we got 8 seconds here, boom, 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 next thing, we're never going to get to that 1,000 seconds. And we start to have a reduction in our ability to be creative and have ingenuity, problem solving. We become more just stimulus response factories where whatever hits me, I just have a sensation or a perception, and then I moved on to the next one and get the dopamine hit. Oh man, if we ever do a media talk again on Living Springs Retreat Live, I've got to talk to you about addiction, dopamine, the reward circuitry of the brain, pleasure, how to have the happiest life, and how to not be deceived. I touched on that a little tiny bit, but I want to quote for you from the founders of modern public relations and from big media elites who admit and brag about what they are doing to manipulate the minds of the masses. I don't have time to get into that today. We got a little bit more, but load up your questions. I'll get to you guys' questions very shortly here. The media mind is more dull. The mind of Christ is more creative. So in the full seminar, I give the real horror of the mental health crisis. Facts like a 60% rise in depression among teens in just 6 years with the advent of the digital revolution. 50% rise in ADHD, which we already covered. Anxiety up. Teens having the same level of stress as adults. Also, suicide rates. Oh, Lord help us. The teenage girls 12 to 14, threefold increase in suicide in just a few years. That was massive news, and we're still dealing with the fallout from that. But rather than just hit you with the litany of bam, 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 all of the dark reality and facts, I want to end this presentation segment here and go to your questions. I want to end on Dr. Victoria Dunkley, Reset Your Child's Brain. The best news in all the dozens of books that I've read on this subject is going to be what you're about to hear right now. This is my favorite part of all the media seminars because it's so empowering. I guess I should say the favorite part of those things that, reflect more upon our Creator God and empower us spiritually. But even just from a secular perspective, this is my favorite part on the mental health front. Dr. Dunkley has treated hundreds of children with previously diagnosed disorders. So basically, she's a psychiatrist, and they come into her office, and they have all these problems of ADHD and disruptive moods, depression, anxiety, bipolar, et cetera, et cetera. They've been diagnosed by mainstream psychiatrists, and they want to go to her for an alternative treatment instead of having the pharmaceutical treatment. Her prescription is just a 3-week media fast for those kids. 100% media abstinence. Abstain entirely from all screen time for 3 weeks. We'll watch what happens to the brain, watch what happens to your mental health symptoms, and then you can begin to, after that, reintroduce quality media, nature-paced, not hyper-stimulating media. And here are the results. 80% of her patients have the majority of their symptoms disappear in 3 weeks of no media. Half of her patients have all their symptoms gone in 3 to 4 weeks. Screen time is a contributing factor to virtually all the children she has treated. She states, I began prescribing video game restriction with startling results. I observed how the vast majority of children exhibited certain symptoms surrounding gameplay, symptoms strikingly similar to amphetamine exposure that resolved in the days or weeks of complete abstention. Their development would grow by leaps and bounds when screens were most restricted. And that piece about amphetamine exposure, you might be like, oh, come on, that's a tough pill to swallow here. That's hard to believe. Listen to Dr. Nicholas Kardaras, author of the book Glow Kids. He says, I've treated hundreds of heroin addicts and treated many screen addicts as well, and it's easier to treat a heroin addict than a true screen addict. And I could give you quote after quote on the addiction front. We'll save that for another time. The media mind is not well, but the mind of Christ is healing. Jeremy, do you have any questions loaded up from our viewing audience on the media topic? And I guess if you ask other health questions, if I know the answer, I'll share my thoughts on it. If not, we'll catalog it for the right guest. But Freshwater Soul, thank you for the hearts. We've got a lot of love in this community. My family and I, we have a little song we sing. I'll tell you about that in just a minute. John Potts, is there anything out there that helps people with autism? You know what? I realized the autism question was so unbelievable on Dunkley that I just didn't include it in the bullet points, but it's actually in her book that she finds these results across the board with all those mental health conditions. And it sounds so unbelievable that you can actually help with autism with that media fast, but that's what she's experienced. So for what it's worth, thank you. By the way, my wife's maiden name is Pot, P-O-T-T. So I don't know if you're Dutch or what, but that's kind of a neat connection. Kay says, I'm convinced that scrolling on a screen creates or drives the hunt for dopamine. Yes. And makes one want more and more. Am I wrong? No, that's absolutely correct. They created the never-ending scroll, the endless scroll. I forgot the term for it many years ago for that very purpose, because we used to get to the bottom of the web page, and when we got to the bottom of the web page, we got off and did other things. And they've devised so many methods to capture and keep our time that are. And there's nothing wrong with engaging with people and trying to create quality content that engages. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now, right? But if you're using methods that are manipulating the mind and using high-tech psychological subversion of the conscious mind, that there are whistleblowers. Some of you have seen the documentary Social Dilemma. I was screaming from the rooftops, same things that these guys were saying, and then quoting them when they started coming out and quoting. And then they came out with the documentary, and I'm like, yes, people are waking up to the risks, the dangers, particularly to young people, but to all of us, and how we have to use these media wisely. And so, yeah, the dopamine thing, that's a whole other discussion. I love having that discussion. It takes a little time to unpack that. Maybe we'll do that a little bit later if there are more questions on the addiction front, but we'll go on to some more. Very good. Thank you, Kay. Tony Alvarez says, so it's just Revital Living products. And what else did you take? Because you're not listing them. Yeah, I didn't list them all because I transitioned out of stuff you got to buy, because I bought the vitamin D. I bought the echinacea. I bought the quercetin, the NAC, the vitamin C, the zinc, the elderberry, the garlic, and garlic, just, clove, just cut it up into bits and swallow it. Ginger. And boy, I should have brought my notes, because every time it comes on, I go to the notes and it's all there. Turmeric, and many products that some are at the LSR store, some are not. But Jeremy, feel free to flash any of those up so people can get them right from LSR. We appreciate, by the way, you guys supporting what we're doing by going to the store. That makes all of this possible. But yeah, Tony, those are the immune boosting things that I was listing earlier to help boost the immune system. If anybody thinks of any that I forgot, feel free to shout them out there. Oh yeah, the tea. That's a good one. We do teas. We do the immune boosting teas in our family as well. Excellent. Yeah, scan that QR code. And also, actually, gratitude, smiling, hugging your family. That was the song. We do hug the love around, hug the love around. We are all united, hug the love around with our children. And actually, that physical touch and the eye contact, we don't have enough of that these days. And that actually improves the immune system. Isn't that powerful? I mean, you guys remember hearing Dr. Mark Sandoval talk about the law of life? That's the law of love that brings life. And so when we are giving, that actually boosts our health. And the studies all bear that out. Acts of altruism, deeds of kindness and service actually improve our psychological state, happiness, and our immune system. It reduces disease risk. Isn't that amazing? So yeah, there's cheap, free, intangible things like that. So very good. Should we get some more questions? Watching from Louisiana. That's great. Welcome, Charlene. Blue water pines too. From a little sprout, I always lived surrounded by pines. Yeah. And would be covered by pine pitch. Yeah, that can get annoying. Living in the heart of the woods with sea is for me. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Boy, you're speaking to my soul with that. I got pine pitch on my feet this morning because I was doing the grounding thing. I'm walking outside and the pine, all the pine needles had fallen, and like, yeah, better sweep those before I walk there next time. By the way, if you get pine pitch, just get some sand. You know, the sand is graty, and just rub that on the skin really hard, and that's the easiest way to get that off if anybody's new to that. Tony is watching from Bakersfield, California. Awesome. Welcome, Tony. 3 hours behind us, or 2 hours behind, rather. Blue Water Pines 2 also says, yes, watching from Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. Welcome. Boy, we got a lot of American viewers this time. And it's John again. He's tried and tried to get Duke University to let his son, who has autism, into their IV cord blood cell therapy with no luck. They say that it has helped with different things. I'm not aware of that one. So my prayers are with you and your family, though, brother, and that your son would get into that program if that's the Lord's will, and that whatever needs to be done to help him could be done. And just what special, beloved children of God every special needs person is, every person with a mental health condition. They're loved. They're loved by their God and by their parents. And so just thank you on behalf of humanity for doing what you can. I know that's natural to you as a dad, but oh yeah, St. Augustine, beautiful place. I've been there. Yeah, I've been to your history sites there in St. Augustine. Philip Gregory says, wow, hearts and amen. Thank you, Philip Gregory, Aarons Jr. By the way, you guys might see me literally coming in with glasses soon because it's doing my lives with you. I'm looking at the screen here. And you might notice occasionally I struggle with the name because my dad said, son, when you're in your 40s, it's not if you will need glasses, it's you will. It's a matter of when in your 40s. And I was really motivated to prove him wrong. I'm like, I'm going to eat all my whole plant foods, antioxidants, and my beta carotene, eat a bunch of carrots, and I'm going to see if I can make it to 50. I didn't even get close. I need glasses now at 44. Nathan Douglas says, fine on a small farm in Texas, y'all. That's awesome. I love the country living. That's great. Anna Ya says, I need media fasting. Anna, give it a whirl. Pull the trigger on that. I can media fast. Yeah, all the political news. We can get addicted to binging on political news, can't we? Once you see who the winner is. Oh, by the way, guys, calm down over the election. 42% rise in heart attacks at Kaiser Permanente in his study in 2020 in the 5 days after the election. Come on, get a grip. Take a deep breath. Be still and know that he is God. He raises up kings and he deposes them. Take a walk in nature, and you can be just as joyful no matter who's in office. You can have just as much internal, psychological, spiritual, relational peace, although the relationships are tough because if you have people around you who are true believers, and it's just like, but there's so much division. Can we heal those divides? Can we affirm everybody's humanity? What was the quote that I heard? We want to love our children more than we hate each other. Something like that from one of these political figures, actually. It was a really good statement. Nathan Douglas said, if you use your dopamine reward on screen, it won't be there to help you when you need it, or at least not as strong. Yes. Yes. By your dopamine reward, I think you're talking about the motivation. So the motivation to have reward, to have a sense of success, if that is diverted from life purposes that actually achieve something for me into, say, a video game, then yeah, it's being wasted in a non-entity, a non-reality. And you find less motivation for things back in the real world. I'm speaking from experience of counseling with many young men who are overcoming video game addictions. And this is the experience they've described, that they've lived. And what you're describing there, Nathan, is the science behind it. I'm restraining myself from going into the big dopamine science lesson, but it's a very interesting one. And what you said is true. Ian Stewart. Wow, those stats are, I don't know. We hit a lot of stats, so I'm not sure exactly which ones when you commented that. But yeah, we're in pretty crazy times. I mean, you never thought you'd see this. If you imagine going back 20 years, guys, and being like, this is what the future is going to be like, just 20 years or 30 years, it would be hard to imagine that this is our reality of the presentation we just went through on the media. So yeah, thank you, Ian. Thank you for that. Bring back Leave It to Beaver. Yeah, I grew up watching Nickelodeon in the 80s. So it was the reruns from the 50s. And I was watching Lassie, Leave It to Beaver, and the moral quality of those programs and Andy Griffith, they were lessons meant for families and children, happy families. And you can scoff at it and be like, oh, that's idyllic. But there were efforts, I think, to try to instill values that would actually help children in their coming of age. However, it turned out to be just a foot in the door of what became a degraded industry that actually warps the value system of a generation. So I almost wish we never would have brought those into our homes. My grandpa, by the way, was a salesman for Zenith. Is that ironic or what? Because I do all these seminars on the topic of media. And my grandpa was, in the 50s, the salesman for Zenith televisions. And God bless him. You know, people didn't know any better. They looked at Leave It to Beaver. They're like, man, Ward Cleaver, that's kind of like the father I'd like to be. And it was a model family. And then you get Al Bundy in the 80s and Homer Simpson. And then you get don't have families at all. And, you know, fathers and maleness is wrong and toxic. And so you get a real distortion in cultural values in the last 40 years. But and I'll get to you there, Ellen. He got me off on this thing about Leave It to Beaver because I got to tell you one more thing about Leave It to Beaver. This will blow people's minds. Look up the center wall study. This guy looked at the advent of television in a society and the corresponding lag time to an increase in violent crime. And he saw U.S. and Canada, different laws in terms of gun control, different cultures, but they both saw a rise, predictive by when television began in the society. Not very violent television, but the crime rate went up. He looked at other societies and said, well, if this was to be replicable, we will see it in this society where television came in 15, 20 years later. And he makes the prediction and it happens. And I posed the question, how did Leave It to Beaver cause the murder rate to go up? I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's a pretty good hypothesis to say when we are watching entertainment television, even of a morally innocuous, harmless nature, if it's reducing prefrontal cortex function, if it's reducing the quality of the frontal lobe, then self-regulation drops. So it's not just that we're watching violence and mimicking it. It's that we're just harming our self-control of our brain. And so that's part of the reason our society is in the state we're in. Usually it's people ranting and raving about all the violence and sex in the TV and the movies and the video games. And I'm not a supporter of that by any means. But what Dunkley points out in Reset Your Child's Brain is that when there's violence in the video game, it actually only increases the harm slightly compared to all video game addictions, which are all harming prefrontal cortex. So overstimulating media in general is actually going to harm the moral character, if I can use Christian terminology here, of a generation, even if there's not evil presented in the movies. So in our family, we read books. If we're doing a video, it's low stimulant, nature paced, as I like to call it. Our kids play and work and get outdoors a lot. We do things together as a family. So we try not to revert to just entertainments. That's what the guy was getting at with dopamine. You're going to divert your dopamine, reward, motivation. Now, Ellen, you've been waiting for a little while. There's also something called virtual autism because of screen time, but before the age of 2. You know, I wasn't familiar with that term. I need to read up on that, but I know that it does begin early. And there are, by the way, other conversations that we probably shouldn't have on this platform that are probably going to be had at a national level very soon, involving certain figures that are probably also maybe kind of verboten on here, but national figures that are questioning certain things we do with our children, not in the media realm, but in their immunity and things that we try to, people mean well or trying to help their kids not come down with communicable diseases and so on. But anyway, that's an important conversation too, as well as that the media part. KG 2022 says, hi, do you know of anything that helps with inappropriate sinus? Okay, this one I am going to put, Jeremy, can you put that one on the list for Barbara O'Neill, Monday, November 11, 12:30 Eastern time, 11:30 a.m. Central time. I don't have a medical background. I have a background teaching. My degrees are in the social sciences, actually. History, political science, economics. And I got into talking about media because I was a teacher in the classroom. And I saw my own students becoming so immersed and so addicted that I just studied deeply into the topic of media. Then on the topic of health, like most of you guys, I just studied it because I want to be healthy. I want to raise a healthy, happy family. And it's just really, really interesting. So some of the medical questions, I want to appeal to a higher authority and medical mind on. So like that last one that we just got. So we'll catalog those as I said I would do. So there is the reminder there on the screen about Barbara O'Neill who's coming. Amafessa says, and I'm sorry if I pronounce, oh, yeah, there's no A at the end. See, there's my eyes. I told you guys, you're going to see me with glasses one of these days. Amafess, if I'm saying that right. Would taking away kids' devices abruptly help their attention span? Yes, but I don't necessarily recommend just take them away abruptly. I'm going to read the rest of the question. But the answer to that question is yes, it would help. If you're replacing it with something that's not overstimulating, if you're replacing it with something, I guess nothing else is. Like if they're staring at a blank white wall and watching paint dry, their attention span will increase. But, we could do better than that. But I like the question because I get a lot during Q&A sessions at churches. Parents are asking, okay, how do I make the transition? How do I make the change here? And the rest of the question here says, but there is a famous quote. I forgot who said it, but I remember it. If you cannot have something, you will crave it even more. I'm not sure that is scientifically substantiated, because my kids cannot have cigarettes, so they don't, so they're not addicted to nicotine, so they don't crave cigarettes. But the guy next door who's struggling with his tobacco addiction, when he hasn't had one for a few hours, he craves, right? So out of control cravings are actually from addictions, not from the lack of an addiction. So that's my perspective on that. But I do resonate with your word abruptly, because there have been parents who've attended my seminars and they come in and they're like, all right, we learned everything is terrible about media and you're not doing any more of it. And they rip this out of their hands, they rip this out of the wall, and they just walk out of the room. And the kids are left with nothing, just holding the bag. And it's just actually kind of abuse and neglect, quite honestly, because we've got to replace what they were spending their time on with something better. Not giving them necessarily low dose addictions and hoping they don't crave more of it. That's probably barking up the wrong tree, in my opinion. But giving them better things that fulfill and that improve their mind, their body, their emotions, their relationships. I mean, I didn't even get in the presentation into the topic of the EQ and sociability that's lacking in this upcoming generation. It is really a concern. When you survey teachers, when you look at the research on the quality of their social engagement, there's some good news. Can I say something positive about this generation? I say a lot of positive things about Generation Z, actually. I'm from Generation X, and we were known as being like the rebel, independent, individualistic, against the establishment and against, frankly, our parents and teachers, and getting into trouble, getting a driver's license, going out and doing whatever. That was when I was 16. I lived, in a way that I regret and would like to go back and be a little more productive and not just interested in entertainment and getting into trouble. Generation Z does less of that. Alcohol consumption is down for the teens. Teen pregnancy, promiscuity is down for the teens. But mental health problems and suicide are up. They're killing each other less, but they're killing each other more, or it's killing themselves more, to just put it in a crass way. So there's less violence between them, but the tragic results of the mental health crisis of that generation is evident. They're also, I like Gen Z. Hey, Val, good to see you watching from Florida. They're likable people on average. And whereas my generation was a little bit more, had an attitude, and the Gen Z actually spend more time with their parents when they're not doing their media than my generation did. And so there are some actually glimmers of hope here. I don't remember how I got on that, but I wanted to give you guys some good news. I'm not like the guy who comes at church and is just like, kids these days, the teens, they're all bad. That's not the tone of it at all. The teens actually love the seminar, especially Gen Z. 12 years ago, the millennials were a little bit like, who's this guy? But anyway, Believer says, my mom's ankles swell, but when she puts them up with pillow, she gets terrible cramps in her legs. She's 82. I wonder if she puts them up incrementally, just start low, leave it there for a few minutes. And again, I'm out of my specialty. I'm just thinking with you, Believer. Have you tried something incremental where it's not too much shock to her legs? and also slowly over time, just some stretching. Very gentle, obviously. We're not, hitting the boot camp gym here with 82-year-old mom, but, some gentle stretching may help with that. So Jeremy's reminding us, keep those questions coming. I think he put that because he's like, Scott's not going to know what to say about that one. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, we'll pass that one on to Barbara. Barbara O'Neill, Monday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Central. Boris says, from Virginia, good info. Thanks. You're welcome, Boris. Good to have you. Boris Flores. Love it. Kay says a second live is needed on dopamine topic or a series. Yeah. We set the schedule as a team, and I like interviewing people, but I'm happy to do this with you guys periodically. We could do this a bunch of times over a long period of time. Blue Water Pines too. That is a good. Oh, which one? Jeremy, you don't know when that was posted. There was a good statement made at some point in this presentation. And Blue Water Pines, I appreciate your affirmation, and thank you for your contribution. Sharon says, how much iodine? Allergic. I think, are you saying you are allergic to iodine? In that case, I don't know, because that would be a unique individual situation. But the quantity of iodine, I know that I put 4 drops in that one. 4 drops of atomic iodine, meaning single atom. Not atomic like it's going to explode in a Hiroshima bomb or something, but atomic meaning single atom. Is nascent iodine. It's not bound. So it's a very special form of iodine in the RevitaGuard and the Revita Sinus. 4 drops of iodine in that one as well. And so you don't want too much up the sinuses. So I actually add extra to the throat personally. But anyway, that's the amount of iodine for those. And take iodine as a supplement too. Yeah, there's the Revita Living products at the LSR store. I highly recommend everybody supplementing B12, D3, iodine, and omega-3s, algae omega. Those are my choices for the must-have nutritional supplements that we take regularly. So more questions or more comments there, Jeremy? Yes, agree upon that. Thank you, Blue Water Pines. Appreciate that. And Konnichiwa says, KG 2022, hydrating drinks, reducing. Oh, okay. So this is the list. I was like, hey, what other natural remedies and supplements do we add to our immune boosting routine? Yes, hydration, absolutely reducing stress. I mentioned both of those, and I did not mention no caffeine. Folks, go no caffeine all the time. I'm telling you, caffeine increases the sympathetic nervous system. It increases the fight or flight action. It is a stressor. So I know I want it because I want to increase because I'm tired. Well, if we get the other laws of health in place, if we're doing hydration, motion, nature, rest, and nutrition, then you're sleeping well. You have it dark at night, bright light in the morning, near infrared light in the morning, by the way, in the first 30 minutes to 1 hour after sunrise. Get 20 to 30 minutes of that. That light, this isn't like skin exposure and vitamin D. This is near infrared light. It actually penetrates your clothes. It activates your mitochondria to tell your body to produce melatonin at the right time in the evening when it's getting dark and you're getting ready for bed. So you sleep right. You do all those things. You won't need the caffeine. I'm telling you from experience. Hi, I am Scott, and I am a recovering Mountain Dew addict. Okay, believe me, I used to drink 3 liters of the stuff in an evening. Hold on, Jeremy, go back to that when I wasn't done with I stopped in the middle on the caffeine. And when I got off of it, I'm like, whoa, I have more energy now than I did when I was a caffeine user. And we don't need more stress. We need less stress. And caffeine increases stress. It just does. So I recommend highly that everybody just get off caffeine. Getting proper sleep helps that person a lot with dysautonomia. Oh, that was the question. That was not my immune boosting question. That was a dysautonomia question. I still have flare-ups, so seasonal weather changes are very hard on me. Thank you for that input, Konnichiwa. I appreciate that a lot. Now you can go, Jeremy, to the next. Thank you. KG220 says, 2022 says, thanks, Cody. So awesome. But I could just, I'll go take a break. You guys just chat with each other here. Sharon Loomis, Oregon. Welcome, Sharon from Oregon. Yes, it is a tad abusive and neglectful for abruptly expose any child with an unsound decision. Having healthy living in place. Yes. As creating new paths is wise. Oh, that's good stuff. I love the verbiage used there. That sounds like a balanced, whole childhood right there. Just filled with all the things they need. Try giving kids something else to do. Sharon Loomis says, yes. And doing things with them to the extent that you can. But I'm telling you, I've watched kids grow up, and I'm not the model. I'm not a perfect parent, so nobody feels that way. But I've watched it in my own home, so I can just testify to this. Kids growing up with pretty much no media, they're never bored. They never run out of things to do. I don't have to give them things. They'll come up with endless things to do. Oh, have you guys seen that video like 7 years ago? It was 3 generations of kids and what they did for fun. Oh, Jeremy, remind me when we do another media conversation with LSR. Let's air that because it's so informative. It's, what did you do for fun when you were a kid? They ask grandma and grandpa. And then they ask mom and dad, what did you do for fun when you were a kid? And then they ask the current children, what do you guys do for fun? It is shocking. It is sad because you get all the nostalgia of building forts and going down to the creek and playing and picking blueberries and playing baseball from those 2 generations. And then you get to these kids and they're like, video games, texting my friends, and it's all media is all they talk about as what they do for fun. So the complete library is at beltoftruth.tv. Thank you for the reminder on that, Jeremy. Because, yeah, we are only just scratching the surface with the little 40-minute, 30-minute presentation I did on media for you. Please share that link, by the way, with parents especially. I mean, we can all use that type of information, but parents who have kids in the home would appreciate that very much. And by the way, when you get over there to beltoftruth.tv, you'll notice that, I'm with Living Springs, also representing Belt of Truth Ministries. Over there, Belt of Truth Ministries is funded largely by people contributing at beltoftruth.tv. However, there are many people around the world watching this in places where $7 is a huge amount of money. Don't contribute, please. Just request a free subscription. If you want to get to know Belt of Truth, you're like, I'm not sure, I'm ready to go there with these guys. Just anybody can, no questions asked. It's all our content is free over there at beltoftruth.tv. The $7 contribution is a suggested donation that we appreciate for folks to help keep Belt of Truth content coming out. But yeah, thanks for that, Jeremy. Appreciate that. And I think we're winding down, aren't we? We'll see you next episode at LSR Live. Join us as Barbara O'Neill will have an in-depth Q&A session. See you Monday, November 11th, starting at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Central Time. Stay tuned, and we'll see you then. And thanks to our producer, Christian Digital Network, from likes to lives changed. Please scan that QR code. Check out their YouTube channel, CDN, quality content there. And we'll see you all next time. I'm Scott Ritzema with Living Springs Retreat.